Hello my friends, welcome back to Multinan.com. It's good to be back and recording those tutorials for you again, so let me show you what I've got for you today. We all work with 3D cameras and we all hate them from time to time due to the fact that it's quite hard to set keyframes in order to have the camera do the things that we want it to do. So today I'm going to show you a very simple camera rig that will help you in many cases to create a very nice and smooth camera motion. So this is a scene that I've built to show you what it's gonna look like. So we have basically a 3D cube, which is made of, 3D layers, and we have a camera that is orbiting around the cube, as you can see. Also, kind of tilting down and zooming in onto the cube as well. So, if you ever try to do something like that in After Effects using regular keyframes, then you know it's not an easy task. So today I'm going to show you how to build a very simple camera rig that will help you out in those kind of situations. So let's just jump in, let's create a new project, create a new composition, 500 by 300, that's going to be just fine. Let's add a new solid, make comp size, that's right, make it a 3D, call it floor, let's align it correctly. Move it down, scale it up, maybe add a text layer, camera rig, let's make it black or whatever the color, we're gonna change that later on anyway. Make it 3D and maybe let's move the floor up a little bit so it kinda, yep, that's right, cuts the layer so it really sits on the floor. And now we can add a light to the scene. A point light should be fine. And enable cast shadows. That's right. And enable cast shadows for the layer as well. And move the light back. Like that. Okay. That's kind of nice. And maybe let's add an ambient light anyway. Just an additional light. Make it an ambient light, decrease the intensity, just to have something to work with, right? It doesn't have to be pretty, just to prove the point of making a camera rig. So right now, if we're going to add a camera in, whatever camera, maybe 35mm preset, that's going to be fine. And we've got all the great tools for orbiting and such, right? But if we do that and try to keyframe this, you know what happens, right? Let me just show you in case you don't. I'm just going to create a position keyframe and a point of interest keyframe as well. And move it here and maybe rotate it like that. Point of interest didn't work. Wasn't required in this case. Okay, so let's just turn it off. Just a position keyframe. And this is what happens. Nasty. There are of course a couple of things you can do to avoid that, but if you would like to have this camera zooming into the object or zooming out or maybe just banking a little bit, so kind of rotating, it's getting really hard to do. So let's forget about that. Let's delete the keyframes, reset the camera so it sits in its default position. The origin of our scene is exactly where the text is placed. So let's start building our camera rig. I'm going to hide the lights so they don't occupy too much space in our layer stack. And let's start. The key to creating a good camera rig is separating all the axes and all the dimensions that the camera can move within, if that makes any sense. So in other words, we're going to create a bunch of null objects. I don't think you can see it. Let's click it here. New null object. It has to be a 3D null. And this one is going to be for banking. So for kind of tilting your camera or your head, if you prefer, left and right. So let's call this cam bank. And we're going to parent our camera to this null. So take a look what happens when I'm going to rotate it on the z-axis. This is banking, so kind of tilting your head left and right like that. So we have this done. It's pretty simple, right? So now we need to take care of the pitch. So in other words, the angle you're looking down on your objects. So again, let's create a new null object. Call this, call this one camera pitch. Make it a 3D layer. And now we're going to parent our camera bank to this camera pitch. And again, we're going to go to the rotation parameter and we're going to take a look at the X rotation. So this is pitch. This is pitch. So we can kind of look down upon the object in the center of our scene. So that's that. And now here comes another one. New null object. Sorry again. Keep forgetting to select the timeline window. Cam heading. So this is turning your head left and right. So again, making it a 3D layer, parenting the previous null to this cam heading. Again, looking at the rotation parameters, and now Y rotation. So we're turning our head left and right. So that's that. And the last null is going to be a 3D null, obviously, and it's going to be like a global control layer for our camera rig. So let's just call this cam controls. And we're going to parent our camera heading to this cam control. So now we've created this structure of 3D objects that control our camera. So the only thing left to do is to be able to move the camera back and forth, so kind of zooming in and zooming out. So how do we do that? Of course, right now we need to build some controllers on our cam control layer and apply a few very simple expressions that you don't even have to type. You can just use a pick whip, so that's the best part. Let's go to our effects control, make sure the cam controls is selected, and we're gonna need a couple of expression controllers. So let's just take the angle, and this is going to be our heading. Then we're going to have pitch. Then we're gonna have banking. And then we're gonna have a slider, which is going to be tracking or zooming or whatever you want to call it. I'll just call it tracking. And now the best part. All the expressions, with the exception of tracking, can be created using a simple pick whip. So right now, let's just log this palette and go to our cam heading null and click on the rotation. And again, heading is Y rotation. So we're going to link this parameter to this controller. So Alt click, grab the pick whip, and just choose this parameter. And it's as simple as that. Next thing we're gonna do for the pitch, so opening up rotations, pitch is the X rotation. So let's just alt click it, grab the pick whip, and point to the pitch, confirm the expression by hitting enter on the numpad. Again, camera banking, rotation, this is going to be our Z rotation. So alt clicking, grabbing the pick whip, going to the bank controller, and we're almost done. We can now twirl those and focus on the tracking. So where is the null for tracking? Well, actually, we don't need a null for tracking, although we could have built another null object to control the tracking, but it's really up to you. Once you understand how this works and you're gonna build your own camera rig, you're gonna start building other rigs which are more complex and might be built in a different way. So this is the simplest I could think of, but still very, very useful. So in this case, to avoid having additional nulls, we're just gonna control the Z position of the camera. So how do we do that? If you ever played with cameras, you've probably noticed that the default Z position of the camera is the actual zoom parameter of the camera, reversed, right? It's a negative number. So we need to offset that value by this tracking. We could, of course, just add this value here, just by simply saying value plus 0, 0, and then this parameter. And this will work, of course, naturally this works, but there's a downside. If you're going to change the preset of your camera, or in other words, the zoom parameter, then the default position of the camera is going to change and you might end up losing control of what's happening, kind of getting lost. And this is exactly what we're trying to avoid. So we are going to force the default camera position to be correct, whatever the case. So in other words, we're going to build an expression that is going to put the default camera position, which means that this parameter is set to 0. So the default camera position will be always exactly the same as if you would just create the camera using the normal, add camera command in After Effects. So to do that, we need to get rid of this expression and make the position of the camera equal to 0 in all axes, and then say value, just in case you want to animate the camera using all the controllers and the position keyframes, because for some strange reason you might want to do that, but I would definitely not recommend it. But anyway, value minus 0, 0, because this is the x and the y coordinates. And now we're going to take the zoom parameter of the camera. So this is actually the default position of the camera. This is exactly how the default position of the camera is calculated once you create the camera. And then we're going to add 0, 0, just like we did a second ago, and this parameter. Simple as that. And now our simple camera rig is ready to be used. We can now lock all other layers just in case and make them shy layers. We don't really need to see them. And now we can start animating. So let's just move away from our text layer. Take the pitch up a little bit, maybe like that. And we're going to set a keyframe here, set a keyframe for pitch, and set a keyframe for heading. Now we're going to move forward 5 seconds, make the tracking equal to 0, pitch a little bit earlier to about, something like that. And the heading maybe here, and we want it to be how many rotations? Maybe 2 rotations and a little bit, so something like that. And right now we've built this animation. Very simple to do using a camera rig, almost impossible to do using regular keyframes. So what else can we do with this? As you can see, the point around which we're orbiting our camera is focused in the middle of our scene. What if you would like to have a smooth camera motion, which looks maybe something like that, but happens first here, and then the camera kind of moves away and does the same thing around some other text layer or whatever object you're working with? Well, we can do that, but first, you know what, I'm just gonna turn the visibility controls for those layers because we don't really need them, with the exception of these cam controls. So let's just go ahead and create another cam rig layer and just place it here, for example. And now let's say we want to start orbiting around this one, but then end orbiting around this one. So what we do is we simply animate the position of this cam controls layer. So somewhere around here, we're going to create a keyframe for position, and around here, we're just gonna borrow the position of this layer. So just simply click the position, copy and paste it here to add another keyframe. And that's about it. And we're going to end up orbiting around that layer. We'll stir orbiting around this one, and now the point of interest or the point of origin, the center of our scene, is oriented around the second text layer, as you can see. So very simple tricks to do pretty complex and smooth looking camera motion using a very simple camera rig. I guess that's it for this tutorial, and the inspiration for this tutorial comes from our live sessions that you can find at ustream.tv channel Happy After Effecting with Multanen, or simply this address. Make sure to register, follow me, and tune in into our weekly episodes on After Effects and on Happy After Effecting, actually. Plus, I'd like to mention that I also broadcast so-called work-along sessions, where I just broadcast how I work on real-world projects. Just because I work on them in a given time, I broadcast that from time to time, and that gives me ideas for new tutorials, because once you're a registered user on Ustream, you can use this chat box and talk with me directly as I'm broadcasting. So make sure to check this out. I hope to see you in the upcoming episodes. Again, thanks for watching. My name is Multanen. Take care. Happy After Effecting.